Imagine losing the ability to eat, surviving two brain tumors, and still competing on a bodybuilding stage. That's the story of Pedro Relvas. Pedro, thanks for being here, mate. How have you
Oh,
been?
Pete, I'm being great, mate. Thank you so much for having me on, mate. I've been so excited. I've been following your stuff. I love the work that you've been doing, mate. So I'm super excited to be one of your first guests.
Mate, thank you. Mate, before we go on, I just want to share with the people out there that I first came across you about 3 or 4 days before I went into hospital from a big operation, the esophagectomy. I got myself into a little bit of a state, and it was around about October, and my operation was, like, say, 3 or 4 days away. And I honestly believed that it was going to be a one-way trip. So it was coming up to Christmas. So I got my boys a whole heap of presents because in my mind, just wasn't going to be there for Christmas. So I wanted to create that time before I went.
Yeah,
And I think it was a mutual friend. It was Mike Debenham that put a call out to you.
yeah.
And you were kind enough to give me a call and have a chat with me and tell me a little bit about your journey, and that gave me some inspiration and hope at a time
Oh,
when I had very little.
thank you, brother.
Your story and your kind words stayed in my head all through when I was in intensive care and when I was at my most vulnerable and through rehab. And you're a
Great.
truly inspirational person, which is why I wanted to get you to be my first person on the podcast. And I'm extremely honored to have you with you today.
Mate, I'm super excited. I'm a big fan of everything you've been doing and fighting, mate, and winning and thriving. So I'm excited for this.
Yeah, me too. So before we go on, mate, I just want, before people find out who the real Pedro is, do you want to take us back to your younger years before any diagnosis? What was life like for you?
Oh, mate, I was born in South Africa, born and raised there. My parents are from Mozambique, but they were born there. My grandparents, mainly on my mother's side, escaped Portugal during the revolution, went to Mozambique, had the family there, born and raised there. But again, with the revolution, they moved to South Africa, which is where we were born. But we grew up with the Portuguese culture, but in South Africa. And the one thing about South Africa, very similar to Australia, is very multicultural. So,
Yeah.
you get to a point where it kind of amalgamates. So that there's no longer Greeks or Portuguese or anything. It's just South Africans. And I've been blessed enough to have moved to Australia later in my years, which is, I find, very similar to South Africa, very multicultural. And then once you amalgamate all that, there's just Australian. And we have our own systems and our own way of being. So I've been very blessed in my life to have traveled a lot. But my life is very different now than it was when I was younger. I was a chubby kid, really, really fat, very
Can't believe that.
insecure. Yeah, mate, I was. But like, I never realized that I was because my brother was a year younger than me, and he was skinny. Like, he was lean, tiny. We had very different bodies, but we looked like twins, and we were almost a year apart. And
Right.
I guess it never really, my self perception with him, we were always both brothers being competitive. He was natural at sports, but I wasn't, but I would just do everything he did. So I never really realized until I got into school how my body was different. But I've always loved sports, even though I was academic, but never really great at it. And I just kept trying and trying and trying and trying to compete. And my mom put us in swimming because that was the one thing we had to learn to do, was learn how to swim. But then we also took martial arts, and through those years, and then came dancing. I started to evolve body coordination, but then I started to enjoy the process. So that's what made me fall in love with sports. And we did everything from cricket to basketball, volleyball. So like, you name it, we've done it. My brother was like what you could say, just natural. No matter what he did, he would excel. I was different. I had to put a little bit more work and effort in. But looking back, I kind of appreciated that. And I think it was my early years in martial arts, to be honest, that actually helped me through the rest of my life and even through my tumors and my surgeries. So I think growing up, it was an old school mentality. Academics was a big part, and I always felt that pressure from my parents to perform, and being the older brother, especially in kind of a WOG family, there's that the older child always feels this perception of more expectations,
More
let's give,
expectations.
yeah,
Yeah.
more expectations, less freedom. And we experienced that, I guess. And my younger years was very challenging in the sense that as an adult looking back, I can see that I was doing a lot of things because it was what was expected of me, not necessarily because it's what I wanted. My
Yeah.
pursuing academics and the subjects and things like that I did, looking back, I did it because I had the pressure from my parents.
Yeah.
And subconsciously, we try and fulfill our place in a family. So we tend to push ourselves in the direction that we think will appease the family.
Yeah.
And yeah, it wasn't until continuing to do that for a very big part of my life, but then the scare with my tumors, and that was the turntable where it was like, okay, well, now it's about time that you need to start taking control.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like up until that point, I
It
always
does.
felt like I was in control. But, the more aware we become, the more we realize we function from an unconscious way. And we're looking for that constant validation. So everything that I did, as much as I thought I was doing it for me, I was indirectly doing it to gain something.
Yeah. Pedro,
Acceptance.
Pedro, you're known for being extremely disciplined in everything that you do and being a tube-fed athlete. Has that always been the case? Have you always been disciplined? I mean, you talk about like, the martial
Actually,
arts and
yeah.
swimming. Both of them are pretty disciplined sort of sports.
No, like it's spot on. Like, no, I wasn't disciplined, and we lack discipline in general. Every human being, no matter whether you're a kid or a parent or a partner. Like, and the one thing about sports that was the discipline was growing up. Again, the times are very different, but back then there was a lot of things like if you say you're going to do something,
Did
people
it?
hold you accountable to that commitment, which means training's at this time, so you show up at that time. And the rule was if you can't train, it doesn't matter, you show up and you sit on the side, you support your teammates, you watch, pay attention, you take notes because you made that
So,
commitment. So you do whatever you can. So growing up with that, kind of, we didn't get the opportunity to question if we felt like doing something. It was
yeah,
always like, no, this is what we're doing at this time on the Tuesday, come rain or shine. The
yeah,
only thing that stopped you from getting there was, God forbid, an accident or being really sick.
yeah,
And I think that helped me in the sense of like just being able to continue to do things because I had to, not because I wanted to. And
yeah.
I started to develop this like habit of not being relaxed psychologically, knowing that I had things that I still needed to do. I couldn't sit down and enjoy a movie or do something knowing I still had X, Y, and Z to do. And
Yeah,
people would say, "Oh, you're so disciplined." But the reality was I was impatient. I need to relax and I just need to get that done so I can relax.
yeah,
But then to be honest, especially with the tumors and things like that, what people don't realize with discipline is that I don't do it because I'm wanting to achieve my goals. It's the one thing people think. It's the complete opposite. I do it because I want a peaceful state of mind.
yeah,
So, like I find if I'm not disciplined, I'm a lot more anxious. I overthink. I feel more unstable. I have more fear come up
yeah,
emotionally. I'm not really function. And the more disciplined I get, the more inconsistent I get because then it gets harder to get disciplined again. There's just no motivation.
yeah.
And so nowadays I find that I'm disciplined because it's the best form of anti-depression.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that.
You
That's
know?
so true. And I think as we get older as well, that becomes more of a priority.
Yeah, it's more evident too, right? Like we start to see that. I mean, every time I talk to people, and I'm sure you've seen with your patients as well as your athletes, like when you talk to them about discipline, they have this energy of like more put upon, more restriction. They don't actually realize that that's the step towards freedom.
Yeah,
And discipline, what you do is irrelevant to the discipline you apply. And I would argue that my condition is encouraged my discipline because we constantly have a choice. There's a book called The Untethered Soul. It slips my mind who the author is. Amazing book. Talks about detachment from your thoughts and your emotions, meaning we're not our thoughts, we are not our emotions, we just experience them.
yeah,
But the one thing he says in the book, which I really like, he says people overcomplicate things in the sense of like trying to become happy, working on their marriages, working on their jobs, working on their health. And the question is very simple. The question is, do you want to be happy? And most people turn around and say, yes, of course I do. If my marriage works, I will be happy. No, that's a
yeah,
condition. That's a condition. Like the question is, do you want to be happy regardless of what's around you? And that really stuck with me. And I was like, yeah, I do. It doesn't matter if I'm going through a breakup, losing a job, whatever the case is, I want to be happy, which is a hard call. And then what I
yeah,
realized with my condition is what made me happy was being around part of life, living life, exploring, getting up, doing things, learning, adventuring. And in order for me to be able to do that, I had to become disciplined with my condition. I have to make sure my meals are prepped. I have to make sure that I'm thinking ahead. I have to become disciplined in order to enjoy the freedom I desire,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
And that's a
And that was my stepping stone into the discipline thing.
yeah. Pedro, before, your diagnosis and everything showed up on the radar, did you have a particular picture in your mind of what the future held, what you're going to do?
Yeah, I did actually. I mean, growing up, I always wanted to be a vet. It was my primary thing. Yeah, I wanted to be going to veterinary science. Me and animals, we get on well. I've got my baby girl just lying next to me here, my little pitties. So I've grown up around animals, and I've got way more time for animals than I do for people. I think we've
Absolutely.
got way more to learn from dogs than they do from us. But that was my dream. And then obviously with the politics in South Africa, it became really hard because there were only two universities offering that. And with the affirmative action in place, they were catering to the majority, which means the value of veterinary science in South Africa was considerably low back in 1994 compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So I went into the sports sciences. My goal was always to work with athletes. I've always been happy with the psychology, but I've loved the sports psychology coming from the martial arts background and how the mind can actually contribute to better performance than actually just training the physical body.
Yeah.
You know, there's a very interesting story I'll tell you. It's like sidetracked. My partner was doing these double unders, trying to get better for CrossFit, and she was getting
Yeah.
stuck at 3. And I spoke to her. I said, "I'll show you how to do that." And she handed me the skipping rope. I was like, "Nah, I'm too old to be skipping." I was, I was mentally. She goes, "Is this your mind control stuff?" I'm like, "Yeah, what's up to you? If you're open to it." She goes, "Yeah, let's do it." So I just got her to imagine black and white what she was currently doing, how it felt, as much detail she could, got her to swap it off to the side and reimagine colorful images of her doing it the right way. So the sound of the rope on the ground, the rhythm, the feeling of your chest hitting against the ground, your feet on the floor, the wind that the rope makes, the hair on your back, like go into detail and just feel the rhythm, feel the flow, how everything's just working in synchronicity. She did that, no word of a lie for about a minute.
Yep.
She gave her the rope back. She went from 3 straight to 8. And then she was so excited and she kept going, trying to beat 8. And I was like, whoa, we need to calm down again. Let's
Yep.
reimagine. This time I did it with her. Again, another minute, mate. I gave her the rope. She went from 8 to 18. So
That's incredible.
that's just proof of what, like when I say that's the one thing that has always like captivated my mind is how our imagination can change us from a physiological level,
Yeah.
performance level. So I showed her this happened in less than 3 minutes between her getting stuck at 3 and going to 18, and with zero technique shown, zero practice, all through just imagining.
Yeah.
So when I finished with the veterinary science wasn't a go, came and started to do that in South Africa with the sports things, but I realized there wasn't much about the mind side of things and more the physical side,
Yeah.
the biological side, I guess. And I pursued that, completed that. But in the process, we moved to Australia. We immigrated to Australia. And in South Africa, I was doing a dual degree law as well as human movements, because that was the other thing that I was always really interested in. But it was more something, let me see what it's about as opposed to commit to. But when
Yep.
I came to Australia, I lost all my credits. They would only give me 6 months credits for psychology. And at the time, I'd already given up 2 years to my studies. So I was like, well, we'll just pursue and finish the psychology because that already set me back again. And I completed my degree with a double major in psych and behavioral sciences
Yeah.
into that area. But then I realized again, it's not. Unfortunately, I find there's one thing between looking at the analytical cognitive mind, but then the other one, how the mind associates to energy. So
Yes.
I kind of lost the feel for that. But at the same time, this is when I found out I was sick. And I guess
How
that
old was you at the time, Pedro?
I found out when I was 24. But apparently I'd
24.
had the tumor since I was 21. I had been presented with symptoms up until that point,
Yeah. What
like
were the
my
symptoms you were feeling?
well, like back home, my tongue would cramp, like I'd be talking to you, and then I just feel like my tongue would, I couldn't move my tongue. And I'd have to bite it and release it. So just like a muscle cramp, which we know straight away can be kind of strange, right?
Mm.
And I also noticed that my left shoulder was really, really sore. Like I get up in the morning, I was just really constantly stiff. But that's when I went to the doctor. They gave me the all clear, told me muscle relaxants. Went back home to South Africa to do my postgraduate. And it was there that I started to get double vision, more headaches, a little bit more issues. And my aunt booked me in to go see a specialist. And she picked it up within the first 30 seconds. She noticed that my sternocleidomastoid muscle, my neck muscle, my left one was considerably more atrophied than my right one. So she said to me, look, I'm going to go send you for scans. And they did a full body PET scan, lung scan, because they were looking for cancers and tumors, and it was later that evening that they found that I had a skull base brain tumor.
Wow. That's
So
incredible.
yeah, and then that's when everything kind of shifted.
Yeah. There's usually a moment in time when you're going through that that sort of burns into your memory and you can always remember it. So when for me, when I went down to see the specialist in Brisbane, we'd done a lot of tests and we'd been to see him and the consult basically went like, this is what you've got and what we're gonna have to do is a 12-hour operation.
Wow.
It's a big operation. It's a bit rough. You're going to be in ICU for over a week. The recovery is going to be hard.
Yeah,
And I remember, my wife was with me and we were driving back up to the sunny coast and I don't think any of us spoke on the way
yeah,
on the way
yeah,
home. It was like an hour and a half and we're both just trying to absorb what was going on.
yeah.
How did you feel when you got the news?
Well, it's interesting. I didn't get the news straight away. My news came in like brackets because I was one of the last people to get my MRI, and I used to be claustrophobic, and I didn't realize. I knew I was in there. I thought I was in the machine for about 45 minutes to an hour, but I had been in there for like 2 hours and 20 minutes or something.
Wow.
And this is for a diagnosis. But already the fact that I had been there for a while and my background being in medical industry, I knew, okay, well, that's not a good sign because usually it means that they've found something and now they're scanning that particular condition.
Area.
Usually, if it's a general check, 30 minutes, they've scanned everything. If they don't find anything, it's okay. Because they're just doing the brain. It's not like they were doing a full
Mm.
body scan. And when I got out of there, everyone had left except the radiographer and the radiologist was there as well, which is kind of different knowing that the radiologist is still on site, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of it was 6 p.m. at night, and they pulled me aside and they told me straight up, look, we're not going to beat around the bush with you. The reality is we did find a mass. They didn't go into details. They said it seems non-cancerous. It goes, it is the only problem is it's in a tough location, but these things are managed. So that's the first piece of information that I got. So I was happy with that. Back in the time, there used to be a TV program called Pinky and the Brain. It was like a Looney Tunes one. These two little
Yeah.
mice. What are we gonna do today, Pinky? Take over the world, right? So that was me. So I named my tumors Pinky because they live
Yeah.
in the brain. So I associate humor with stress.
Yeah.
And that very night I went out with my mates and we just drank to Pinky and we figured maybe alcohol can solve the problem. And, next day, Pinky was still there, but we found the top neurosurgeon in South Africa that we went to go see. And my GP, who's a family GP, known me since I was born, he came with me and we sat with Professor Snickers, and he was the number one neurosurgeon in South Africa at the time. And he pretty much said to me, look, mate, just enjoy your life for as long as you can. And in about 2 to 3 years, put your shit in order.
Yeah.
Because
Wow.
my type of tumor, they'd only operated on 6 people in South Africa. 4 had passed away who had really, really struggled, but because the tumor is very vascular, they need blood. But here's the other thing they don't tell you is that my tumor is predominantly in people over the age of 65 and that are women.
Right.
But I'm not 65. I was 24 at the time and I was fit and healthy. So he was talking to me like I was part of that bracket.
Yeah.
And I wasn't happy with that. That kind of hit home. If I'm honest, I think I'm blessed in the sense that God, maybe it was the sports that he put me in or whatever it was, but there was something in me that just went, fuck you, old man. Like it
Yeah.
generally didn't even affect me. It was just like, even if this was a serious situation, your delivery fucking sucked.
Yeah.
Even if that was like legitimately the case, your delivery
Yeah.
could have been different. So in my mind, I knew someone with that type of mindset is not going to give me the answers I need, even if the
Yeah.
solution exists. And then my dad being overseas in Europe, he's got lots of connections. So we just started shopping around for neurosurgeons, my condition, the scarcity of it, etc. And then we landed on Professor Fish from Sweden and Professor Sammy. Professor Fish had already retired, but he was willing to come out of retirement to do my surgery because my tumor was like the inside of a toilet paper roll, that
Right.
size, but on the skull base. So it was more the risk about getting to that area because it's where the bottom of the skull where the brain sits, there's little foramen, little holes that the nerves and stuff come up through. My tumor was at the base of that, between the base of it and the brain, where all the nerves come up through.
Wow.
So When you do surgery, there one small move and there's a lot of consequences. So
Yeah.
we ended up going to being lucky that Professor Sammy took us on, and I had to go to Portugal to go do treatment there. And then finally we were sent over to Germany for the surgery. But
Excellent.
very different mindset. Again, with like the appointment that you had with your doctor. I remember once in Germany with my second tumor that they found a year after, a Brazilian doctor, Tatajiba, he pulled me aside and he said, Pedro, I can see you look very, very stressed. He says, what you have is very unique and very rare. He goes, but it doesn't make it special. There's an answer and a solution somewhere, and all we need to do is find it, and that's our only goal. It's not that it doesn't exist. It's just that we need to find the right solution. So
Yeah.
that's our job now. And that's a completely different energy of like, go pack your bags and get your shit in order, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, look, I'm if there's any books that I can recommend to people is The Biology of the Belief and The Wisdom of Your Cells. That's two books written by Dr. Bruce Lipton. And he was a doctor that studied, he was a doctor as well as a professor. And he was doing research. And what he found was that what he's teaching isn't what's happening in the research with these cells. Because he believes understanding the cell, you can understand the organism of cells and how they function as a unity. And we all come from this Darwinian theory about DNA is everything. But the
Yeah.
reality is DNA is just a blueprint. It's like a policy procedure. It doesn't dictate every outcome. It's a high probability, but your DNA changes too. But then one thing that we don't understand is how our brain functions through our belief systems and using science and research and biology. So this is not just hearsay, scientific based evidence. It shows
Yeah.
that there's such a big principle on energy that we don't understand. And an example of that is like there was a doctor, a surgeon that operated on people's arthritis. But he never told them that he wasn't going to do the surgery, but he role played the surgery. They were part of a study. They knew they were part of a study, but they all believed that they were getting the surgery. And it wasn't until 2 years later that they found out, and close to like 90 something percent of them had no arthritis just because they were told that they had the surgery and they were all good.
Yeah.
And you see these beliefs. And there was one doctor that actually said he had told his patient, he was an oncologist, and told his patient that he had at most 12 months left, but more likely anywhere 6 to 9 months or something. But apparently within 3 months, this guy had passed. And when they did the autopsy, he didn't even have cancer.
Wow.
So he did have tumors. And the doctor said, that I took I took responsibility for that because I felt that he believed he was going to die because I had told him that. So now if patients ask, because look, at the end of the day, us as humans, we're very persistent and we expect doctors to give us a day.
Mm.
So we put
Yeah.
this pressure on them where we kind of have this, like, you should know how much time I have and what the next stage is and when it's going to be. But the reality is that means we're just part of the norm, part of the function, part of the normal public. We need to take accountability and say, what's the prognosis? What can I hope for? And he now tells these patients, look, I no longer give anyone deadlines because I've seen people that weren't supposed to last long, last forever, and other people that had no issues go in 2 months. He says the most determining factor is your attitude to your situation. So be positive, enjoy the now, and do the best you can for tomorrow. And that's what he's
Absolutely.
asking us. And that's my job with you, is to make sure that we continue to do that. And he found that he's had way better progress with his patients with that type of mindset. So
Yeah.
that's where I think I differ with the delivery. You think surgeons would get better, but unfortunately in today's society, I guess this is a very general in comment, but I think the majority of people that go into medicine nowadays aren't doing it because they have this willingness and this compassion to make an actual difference. They're
Yeah.
going it for the accolades, the prestigious, and that. Professor Sammy, who's the best in the world, was at my bedside when I was having an embolization. They had the French guy who was the top radiologist surgeon. This is how blessed I am, mate. Like, they flew him from France to come and do an embolization so that I wouldn't bleed out during surgery. And Professor Sam is at my side. And I looked at him and I even joked. I was like, just so you're aware, you're not getting paid to be here today. I'm paying the other guy. And he laughed at me and he goes, no, I'm just here to make sure he does a good job. And mate, like, just having him there, I felt safe. I went into
Yeah.
this. The results they were like amazed at the results just from the embolization. I did not need a blood transfusion. My surgery, 95% of the time, I have a blood transfusion, and the surgery usually lasts from 3 to 5 hours. My surgery was 13 hours.
Wow.
And this, I did not need a blood transfusion. So yes, I think my health in sports helped, but my energy, knowing that I felt safe and secure and I was positive and I had a team of people that were there because they were compassionate. Professor Sammy did my 13-hour surgery. Then they flew in a young girl from Greece who had a brain embolism that he operated on her for 9 hours after me.
It's incredible, eh?
Now, this man doesn't do it for the money. And I think that's the one difference that we kind of missing as we progress. I think we also as human beings have given our health away. We
Yes,
haven't taken sovereignty. We've made it everybody else's responsibility, but your health is your responsibility.
100%. Yeah. Mate, when you came out of surgery, how
Yep.
how did things go from there?
Oh, mate, not that good the first time. Like, I guess you and I were something that way because, the quietness, the processing. And then we
Yeah,
have this really good ability of putting blinkers on and staying focused and getting through what we need to, right?
absolutely.
And it makes us emotionally detached, but not a good thing. And luckily, we've grown and we've learned to balance that with the process. But back then, I didn't. I went through all the procedures until I had my surgery. When I had one deal with my dad, I said to him, if things don't go great and the surgery's done, but I'm unable to live a normal lifestyle, just don't bother. Like if I was cognitively aware but unable to speak, unable to move, needed a machine to breathe. Like I feared that I didn't have the ability to withstand that. So
Yeah,
that was the one condition I had if I chose to go for the surgery. If I was going to choose the other options, they were just superficial maintenance things. So we decided the surgery because I thought I'm young enough, I'm fit enough. If I'm going to survive it, now's the time. Did it, and I remember waking up from it, but I was strapped down. I had the tube in my mouth. And when I woke up in a really bad state, I was aggressive, violently aggressive. I was pulling tubes off of me. I wanted to attack the nurses, and I didn't know where I was, where I woke up. And they had to forcefully strap me down and sedate me. And when I woke up again, I had the tube in my mouth. They removed that. They unstrapped me. My dad made me apologize, which I did. Everyone was cool. And being stubborn, I never even set in. This was the day after that I woke up and I wanted to stand up and they wouldn't let me. And I said, I'm standing up because I just felt like I want to stand. Like, fuck, I've been on my back for 2, 3 days. I want to stand. And I stood up. Everyone in the in the ICU clapped. And I was like, why are they clapping? Until I sat back down, I was broken. I was wrecked. I was like, how the fuck can you just stand up? I was dizzy. Obviously,
yeah,
headache. And that was the first time that I realized this is serious. And that night, because I lost my hearing in my left ear due to the surgery, and I had this tinnitus, just like this bell ringing. And that was the first time I actually cried through the whole process. Like the whole process from finding out to surgery was close to 6 months, 4 months. And that was the first time I broke down and cried, and I had this victim mentality, like, "Oh fuck, why me? I've done things the right way." And I don't know what it was, mate. There was something that just went in my head that said, "If God wanted you dead, you would be."
mm,
And then I realized, well, if it was my time, I would have gone. So this is happening for a particular reason. And at the end of the day, this might not. They always say God gives things to the toughest people.
yeah,
And sometimes I think he gives things to the people who ask to be the toughest.
yes, yeah,
I wanted to be tough. I want to grow. I want to be aware. I want to be this amazing human being as best as I possibly can. And I think that's God's way of making me that person. And that was the first time that I realized, this isn't about me. If I'm meant to die, I'm meant to die. It's just not today.
yeah,
So, and from that point, like literally, that was the first night I said, I'm not going to work towards my grave. I'm going to work towards my life for
and that's
however
a
long
great
that
mindset.
is, you
Yeah,
know? So I was very lucky from that first night. Everything I did in hospital was never towards, it was always towards to a point that I could live the best life I could.
that's good because like one of the when life throws things at us, the most human reaction is often that "why me" mentality.
Yes.
But at some point, the biggest thing you can do is put that to one side and start building forward. And obviously, you've done that pretty well.
Mate, like the why me is always evident, and like I'm not a religious person at all, but I am a person of faith. And my always said to me, you know, God will heal you. God will do this for you. God, you'll be fine. You'll be this. And I was like, you say God is everything and all being and all knowing. So I'm not saying God did this to me, but I'm saying God allowed it. Because if he didn't want it to happen, he would have stopped it.
Yeah.
So if he allowed it, and my mentality is like, I don't claim to understand God's will. There's amazing people out there that cannot have children, and there are drug addict people that are living the worst lifestyle, that are giving birth to kids with defects because of their lifestyle. I am no one to judge. I don't understand it. There's a lesson in everything, but it's God's will. And I think that's where true faith comes in, is that God's will doesn't mean you're going to get a prize at the end. It just means it's God's will. Whatever that is, you don't understand it. You just have to do your best through it. So my faith always came in asking God for strength, not answers.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
not to
great.
get me out of this. And I think that was a big difference as well for me.
Yeah. That's awesome. Also, we've got something in common here as well. It's probably one of the most confronting parts of your journey is losing the ability to swallow.
Yeah.
That's been a big part of my life. I've, had that inability to swallow probably from about 16, 17-year-old. So I've
Yeah.
lived most of my life not knowing any different. How was the transition for you?
Mate, I was lucky in the sense that my friends were great. They just allowed me to do my thing, but they were never embarrassed or shy. And I find there is a cultural difference between here and South Africa. South Africa, for example, if I'm feeding through a tube at a nightclub or whatever it is, people are more interested. Here, they see me and they think it's drugs. They're a lot more aggressive. People will look out of curiosity, but the energy is standoffish.
Yeah.
So where I love the people that come up to me and say, I don't mean to be rude, but I saw you do that. What's all that about? I'm like, no, mate, I'm glad you asked. I like sharing the awareness, as opposed to people staring but subconsciously judging. And that was the biggest thing that I found, was the thing that triggered me the most. But at the same time, I think the difference between us, mate, is for people like us, we always look at the whole situation. And the reality is, as much as the swallowing is a difficult part, it's also an acceptable part given the alternative.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you think to yourself, well, I'm walking. I can dance. I tell this story all the time, man. I was in Germany after my surgery, and the only thing that we watched was MTV because of the music, and the shows were dubbed. Sorry, was subtitled. Everything else was dubbed. So I left the TV on in the hotel room when we got back, and they were playing a song, and I started dancing to it. We actually got back from having some ice cream, which I didn't have. So we had gone for a walk, beautiful Germany, green everywhere, this outdoor coffee shop, and there's this young girl having a sorbet with her uncle or dad or whatever it was. And she was in a wheelchair eating this ice cream. And I looked at her and I was so fucking jealous. I was like, man, I would literally swap places with you in that wheelchair and enjoy that ice cream. Look, like, honestly, I was like, fuck, in a heartbeat. I didn't even think, I want to put money down right there. And I get home and this music's playing and I start dancing. And they go, I don't get you. You go through hell and back and you're still dancing. And mate, it hit me then and there, boom. If this young girl had wheeled past my room and looked in and saw me dancing, she would have said, I will fucking swap places with you right now. Yeah, have my ice cream. She would have thrown that at me, mate. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, you know what? Count your blessings, man. Like that was when I realized, yeah, look, it's tough. There's days that are harder than others, but those days it's just because I'm more of a bitch than others.
Yeah.
You know, like in all honesty, mate, like what we've got and what we have, the alternative is a lot tougher, but at the same time, it comes with so many good things. I mean, for you, it's a little bit harder in the sense because you never got your peg put in, did you?
No, I weren't able to have a peg because when they took my esophagus out and pulled my stomach up, my stomach sits in a position now where they wouldn't be able to get a peg feed into it.
Yeah.
That I would have loved to have had that peg feed because I think.
See, but look, this is where I think you might have it tougher because with the peg feed, it gives me a way out. Like for you, everything still has to go orally. So despite the discomfort or whatever, you have to deal with that. Me, if I'm not hungry and I need to hydrate, I can still drink water. I can still inject and I can get my meals in. The biggest thing when people have a cold or flu is eating. They don't feel like it. The stomach can't handle it. They don't hydrate. So then the second or third day, they're feeling sick. But it's not just from the sickness. It's from malnutrition and dehydration.
But
when I'm sick, I've got my tube. Whether I want to eat or not, I can keep injecting gently. And after a day, I've still got the energy. I've got the minerals to help my recovery. So in many ways, there's so many positives that come with having a tube. It's
Yeah,
to the point that you'd say every human being would benefit from having one from a health perspective.
absolutely. I mean, I remember talking to you a while back and I was so excited. I went to my surgeon and I was like, mate, I need to have a peg tube. It's going to fix all my
Yeah,
problems. And then he just had to remind me that, internally it wasn't
it's just not
possible.
viable. Yeah, it's just not viable
And
because of the
yeah, but
difference.
I was so excited to try and
Yeah,
have a peg feed. Yeah, but
it would have made,
yeah,
I believe it would have. So that's a great benefit. And really, if that's the consequence of what I've gone through,
yeah,
easy.
yeah, yeah. So when did you start to rebuild your identity from patient to sort of deciding that you're going to be a coach?
Well, you see, I never had that transition, to be honest. Like I always, so with my martial arts, I was teaching as well. So I've worked with kids. I was a swimming coach at uni. So teaching was always something that I felt good doing. I've always been a great student, but I never ever felt like a patient. I never ever felt like a victim. Honestly, I've always been very sovereign over my body, and I'm one of those people. Like you do X-rays, I don't give a shit who reads it. I'm reading them; they're mine. I need to understand what's happening. I need to know. It
Yeah,
doesn't mean that just because not a doctor, but just because I'm not a photographer, it doesn't mean I can't look at my pictures.
that's right.
Like so,
Yeah,
I need to know what's happening with mine. I've always had that kind of attitude. So everything that I've done, if a doctor fucks up, it's on me because I hired him.
yeah. I
You
think the
know?
more you can see, whether it be X-rays, ultrasounds, whatever, the more you can see and the more you can understand, you can
Yeah,
start to have more positivity about what you're going through.
absolutely,
And yeah, and I think more
absolutely.
people need to start doing that because they just take what the doctor says and just move on.
They move on, and to be honest, it's a very strong point. I actually think that understanding what's happening, you're creating a mental picture in your mind, what's happening in your body. So you
Yeah,
create a thought and a belief system of what changes you want.
yeah,
But if you don't understand what's happening, all you're doing is hoping for the best. And you
yeah,
have no power because there's no visual connection. So when I had my throat surgery with Professor Full, an ENT surgeon, to medialize my vocal cords so I could speak again, I asked him, what exactly are you going to do to me? And I was expecting some pushback because here in Australia, that's my experience. I'm the professional. I know what I'm doing. Don't question me.
yeah,
That's been my experience. Not everybody, but majority. But in Germany, mate, he pulled out this like 3D sculpture, called his resident in, and this is the type of patient you want. And he spent 20 minutes showing me what he was doing, what did what. He took the graph out, explained everything. And then he told his resident, if you get patients that ask these questions, give them as much information because they are the ones that have the best potential for recovery
yeah,
because they are part of the process.
absolutely.
And I was blown away by that. So I'm a big believer in like knowing what's wrong with you. You can't change something that you don't know about. You can't fix a problem you have no idea what it is. And
Yeah,
just because I'm not a doctor doesn't mean I can't help.
absolutely. Going back earlier on in the year, I was seeing a psychologist at the time, and um, she said, "Oh, let's have a look at doing some assessments and things." And I got a diagnosis of ADHD and rejection sensitive dysphoria as well. But when she explained everything that was going on and how the body reacts to certain stimuli and comments that people say and how the brain works, that sort of made me realize, okay, I need to change how I'm doing things. And by changing that, it's changed my life. I've been a lot more productive. I've
Yep.
been a lot happier. I've been able to, do a lot more things that I wouldn't have ordinarily done. And it's just about knowing what's going on and making the
And
small
look,
changes.
and it's those things that we're not aware of. So like nowadays, there's a diagnosis for everything, like
Yeah.
ADHD.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to argue to the point that everybody has that at different
Yeah.
degrees, right?
100%.
But
Yeah.
yet the same person who has ADHD at a high level can still function for hours on time doing a specific function.
Yeah.
These people that are diagnosed with ADHD can play video games for hours. They can play music for hours. They can draw for hours. So how is it that they've got focus in those times that you can't even get their attention, but then they have an attention deficit disorder in other areas?
Yeah.
So to me, it comes back to the subconscious behavior of the mind because we think we're being conscious, but we're not.
Mm.
But those behavioral characteristics that we have nowadays, and again, I'm no doctor or psychologist, but I know how to read as well. And I've seen there's a lot of information out there, especially from doctors that work with ADHD, that they say it's more of a response system for fight or flight, especially from a young age, because we haven't dealt with those sorts of sensations.
Yep.
Excuse me. So, as an example, I feel that a lot of parents nowadays want to protect their children, and they want protect their children as well from discomfort.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the biggest thing is protecting people from discomfort is the first step into creating an ADHD response.
Uh-huh.
Because what happens is we no longer learn how to deal with discomfort. We don't understand. We haven't able to process our emotions, our reactions. So I'm
Yeah.
not quite sure what your psychologist explained, but I believe very similar. Like someone says something that we find triggering. So when someone says something, it creates something in us that then we create a thought that associates to that feeling. And then what happens is the person that created that response in us is now the culprit.
Yeah.
Right? Because now you've made me feel this
Absolutely.
way. I didn't feel this way until you opened your mouth. So it's your fault.
Yeah.
Right? And then we don't want to deal with this problem because we don't want to feel what it's like. So what options do we have but to distract our brain?
Uh-huh.
Because anything that we can do to make ourselves feel better or forget the problem. And usually it comes across in the Darvo effect where you now attack that person because that stops you from feeling your own pain.
Yeah.
It takes the transit, or you ignore them and you go ahead and go on your iPad, your other stuff. And one of those other aspects is that when we go to those distraction points nowadays, it's stimulant rich, meaning you scrolling through Instagram and TikTok. But we don't watch a video for longer than a minute, not because it's just boring either. It's because our minds need more activation to continue feeling that way. And then they'll give us medication to stop that. But really, we need to understand ourselves more. So the reality is
Yep.
what I'm feeling that creates the thought is my own higher self saying, pay attention, resolve this shit that you've got squashed in you.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've done is now every time I feel a trigger, I always go, wow, I love you in my life. Thank you so much for making me feel this because I would never have known this about myself had you not said something stupid. No, but the reality is like, had you not said what you said, I would not have discovered that this is me. And to me, that comes with a big sense of freedom because you realize I don't need you to feel better. No matter how you treat me, I'm still in charge of how I feel.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's empowering, and the more we understand that, and even if we're not at that point, to realize we're on our way to that point. So I believe in that completely. And I think that makes a massive difference to attitude every day. But we're constantly being fear-mongered and things like that too, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah.
we always fighting that whole process. It is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So Pedro, when did you start to go back into bodybuilding after surgery? When did you
Mate,
decide?
well, basically, I after my surgery, because I was always active, I wanted to get healthy again. So what I did is I spent the first 3 months. Once I was walking, I actually did spin classes, cycled.
Spin classes. Yeah.
And that's all I did. First thing I wanted to do was get through a whole class without stopping at
Yep.
my pace. So I wouldn't do the drills they did. The instructor was awesome. She always looked out for me. I'd go with my mate and I would just try and get through a whole class without quitting. Then I'll try to get through a whole class trying to go through the drills. And I did that until I could go through a whole class, high level at that point. And only then did I switch to weights. The
Right.
main reason is because I wanted to build my physiology system first before the muscle. I wanted to get my heart back again, my lungs, my breathing, my recovery. And then I slowly got back into the weights. And the weights was just purely about putting weight on because I wasn't eating. I was eating through a tube. I had the hospital food that I wasn't blending at the time. So putting weight on was very difficult. And gym was one of those reasons. And then I hired a PT because I was doing everything myself. But then I realized I needed the extra push in the sense of like, because of the atrophy that I had on my shoulder and certain changes, I needed more of a structural approach. And like they say, dentist needs a dentist. A
Yes.
hairdresser needs a hairdresser. So that was me. And then I found my good mate, Ricky, and he said, "Man, why don't you ever get up on stage?" And I was like, "Mate, you're off." Like, no. But I went and watched the show and then I was looking and my son said, "Oh, Dad, you could do that." And mind you, we weren't looking at the heavyweights, right? We were looking at the lower weights, the under 75s. And I was like, "No, I can't, boy. Like, I've got a tube in my stomach. I've got atrophy in my shoulder." And he looked at me. He was only 5 or something. He goes, "Yeah, and so?" He couldn't understand. It's like, why can't you do it? Because no one said it. We just said, do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Good point. My first show was more about not winning, not having a great body. Obviously, that was part of the process. But for me, it was
Yeah,
working on my mindset. If I can be comfortable with my shirt off and achieving my stomach in my budgie smugglers in front of a stage of people,
yeah,
that's me coming to full acceptance of this is me, who I am now, you know?
yeah.
And
Was part of it as well, thinking that ordinarily after what you'd been through, that wouldn't be something that you could do, and you just thought, fuck it, I'm going to show everyone I can do it.
yes and no. It was more the fact that I wasn't able to compete in martial arts again.
Right.
So for insurance purposes, I wasn't able to have that competition side. And this kind of gave me that little competition feel of being competitive. But I soon realized that it's a very different type of competition. It's not the same. Martial arts, you're competing against someone, testing your own skills. Bodybuilding is very subjective. You're literally only competing against your own mind all the time.
Yeah,
you know. So that was one of the reasons, but then I just fell in love with it because of what it did for my body. And to be honest, with someone with my condition, it's a cheat sheet. It's like, what other sport would you pick with someone with my condition that's perfect for it? You guys have it tough when you prep for a show and everyone's eating donuts and they ask you, do you want a donut? You have to really say no. No matter what, I can't have one. So
yeah,
the temptation's kind of out, right? Unless I go to the effort of blending it. So from that perspective, it's the perfect sport, right? And that sport is actually was what helped me maintain my weight, my physique. Most people say, oh, you do it for the body. And the reality is, no, mate, I do it so I can do everything I do with my kids. We rock
yeah,
climb, skateboard, I pick them up. I lift my daughter up, she's climb. Like, no matter what I do, I'm so physically active.
yeah,
And that was the one thing that why weight training was important to me. And even when I became a dad, again, such a beautiful feeling of best news in the world with the biggest fear that you're not going to be around,
yeah,
And
yeah. I hear you.
I remember lying in bed with my kids and they would be 3 and 5. And I think, how much more time do they have with me? And I look back on that and I was so lucky at those moments because those moments I wasn't filled with fear of losing them. And I was so in the moment of sucking up every little nanosecond with them
Yeah,
because I didn't know when tomorrow was. It helped me as a father make the best of every moment, but it also humbled me the fuck up straight away because I told my kids, my job is to set the example of how I want you to continue to put effort in.
yeah,
I'm not the example of doing what's right all the time. You know, that's not
yeah,
me. I'm the example of constantly trying to be better and accepting my circumstances and approaching them. And my kids, they've taken that up, mate. And I'm blessed with 2 amazing kids that are very supportive. Kai's traveled with me every year with competition. His awareness of life and himself is huge. And I think it's all because of our condition, because we've got to appreciate those things.
yeah,
I think we would have taken for granted, which is there's a lot of things I still take for granted.
yeah.
So yeah,
It
mate,
does
from
make
that
you.
perspective, it just makes you look at things differently, right?
Yeah, that's just what I was going to say. I mean, one of the great things I enjoy doing is on social media is looking at you. I mean, you're a great father. I've seen it myself. But the time that you spend with your kids and the things that you do with them, going down the skate park, walking the dog, whatever you're doing,
Yeah,
but you've got a really good relationship, like training wise with the kids as well.
yeah.
And your son is doing all right by himself. Hey, he's got a really good physique on him, and he seems to take on your mindset of training and being consistent.
Mate, like but I got a lot of slack with him growing up because he was at the gym with me sometimes when he was like 6 or 7. He'd come to the gym, yeah, and then he started school year 1 or year 2. He would come at 5 a.m., 5:30 with me in the mornings, and then I'd get him back and you go to school. And it wasn't about the exercise; it was about the discipline. Getting up
Yeah,
when everybody else is asleep, going to the gym, putting the work in, working together, supporting each other. Yes, he's learning biomechanics, movements, balance, techniques, break falls. And all we did was circuit stuff. It was all martial arts stuff initially. He was on the scale every morning, but why you got your son on the scale? You didn't give him a weight complex. I said, no, he's on the scale because it's just a number. It's just a
yeah,
process. We brush our teeth and we don't analyze every fucking thing that we have wrong. It's just a process. It's a guideline. And we've continued that all the way through. And with them, I've even had a moment with my daughter when we were training and I barked at her and I was like, seriously, you can go sit the fuck down if you like. and just stand there. But this is a team. We're all looking after each other. We support each other. We move weights. We take weights off. And what we do
Yeah.
is we motivate each other, because she was walking around and moving the weights really slowly, and it just felt like so much effort. And I was like, that's not what we do. This is a team effort. I'm not your dad. I'm part of the team, and we're all going to drown if you continue this way. So
Yeah.
pick, sit or contribute. And she contributed. Now, when you watch her train, mate, it's a whole other level. But, oh my God, that's too tough on her. And you're teaching her this and the bad. No, it's not emotive. It's no judgment. It's telling her, make your decision. Do you want to train or no? And it's no halfway.
Yeah.
Is that you want to train, switch your mind on, let's get to work. Because what happens when you have an argument with your spouse and you got to go to work, switch off, do the work, then deal with it later. So it wasn't about building their bodies. It was about building their minds and their characters and their discipline. My son will go to gym every morning, and his mates will want to go out there. Oh, come on. No, I got gym in the morning. Oh, but your dad? No, on my own. So you can go out. He goes, no, I said I was going to go. I made this commitment to myself. I wish I could, but I'm doing this. Yeah. And then, as you would know, I tell him, they're always ringing him for advice, and they're always ringing him to go to the gym. And I was like, because you have that structured discipline. And that's what the gym became about. But as a family and a unit, it humbles us as parents, because yes, we have to be the people that are there, but then we have to accept help from them when they're spotting us. Yeah. As they progress and as they go older, there becomes their competitive ego, because my son is lifting more than me, or the same as me.
Yeah, I've got to that stage too now.
Mate, and he's a natty. People will ask if he's used anything, and I'm super proud. No, he hasn't, not even a peptide or anything else other than Gorilla X Labs, and he is killing it. And he's never followed a strict diet. He's gone through the flow. He's learned how to make the right choices for what his body needs. Yeah. But it's the slight edge principle, doing the right thing the majority of the time. And the right thing doesn't need to be the best. The small choices, waking up half an hour a day, every day, imagine that over a year. Yeah, exactly. You'll be days ahead of the other person, right? So this is what the gym has taught them. Yeah,
and it's great lessons, mate. And it's not just for the gym as well, is it? You know, if people out there are not necessarily going to the gym, just having that discipline and that routine day to day and following it through week in, week out, year in, year out. That's where the magic happens.
It is, but it's navigating those emotional processes. You know, it's great when you want to train, you're excited, you go and you want to pat on the back. It's like, no, that was easy. But the morning that you had a bad night's sleep.
Yes.
Get up and go. But guess what you do when you go? You don't just half-ass your session. You give the best you have with what you have.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's spin this around. My daughter once turned to my son, because they've got a great relationship. The big difference between them and my brother and I is my parents kind of subconsciously made us competitive. Yeah. Why aren't you doing that? Your brother's done that. Why haven't you? You know, that type of mentality.
Okay.
I've stayed away from that. You should have a jersey on. You see, that's why your brother's not sick, because he had his jersey on. That type of thing. Yeah. And I was the complete opposite with my kids. It was always like, you support your brother, you support your sister. And it was never like, oh, it's your birthday, so you get equal. It was always, it's about Kai, it's about Layla. It's not about, oh, let's keep everyone happy. It's let's support one another and make it work. And she turned around and she was upset because he was on his way to gym. And, oh, you're going to gym again? And I was like, do you think he wants to go? Like, he looks tired. And he goes, I don't feel like going, but I didn't go yesterday. I was like, good, go and get it. I said, and Layla, how is that supportive? You could turn around and say, wow, Kai, I would love for you to stay home. I've missed hanging out with you, but I completely get it. And I admire the fact that you're still going to the gym. And if you wanted to spend time with him, ask if you can go with. Or say to him, when you get back, can we watch a movie? That's support.
Absolutely.
She goes, oh, yeah, but you know, I said, no, because one day your husband will be at work. After a big day, he'll get home and you'll say, oh, babe, I forgot to get milk and eggs. Don't you want him to get in the car and get you milk and eggs? Or do you want him to go, oh, well, babe, I'll get it tomorrow after work. I'm too tired now.
Yeah.
And you want him to do it in a way that he's still present with you. So you have a shitty day at work and you said you're going to go to the gym, go to the gym. Because one day when you're old, you've had a long day at work, but you've got family dinner with your family and you want to be present there. How is it different?
That's right.
You know, so that's the skills that we bring. Like, people don't realize this is way more than lifting weights and looking pretty.
Yeah, 100%. Pedro, I've been down to see you a few times through my journey, and you've helped me quite a lot in the beginning, and I still follow through a lot of that now every day. So things like the breathing and also
Awesome.
like the meditation, that's been a game changer for me.
Yep.
My whole philosophy now is around regulation before optimization, using
Yes.
calm as a competitive edge.
Mate, couldn't agree more.
How does that play out in your life day to day?
Mate, that's the whole thing about the AI Alpha project. I created this before I actually came on Jose Silva mind control methods. So I had the AI Alpha project, which is just I want to bring up my inner alpha. And that is a project. And I use the word project over problems because the problem that we all have is not knowing who we are.
Yeah.
But when we use the word problem, the energy is different. I have a
Shifts.
problem at work versus saying I have a project at work.
Yeah.
So the project of finding my inner alpha, I alpha, and Jose Silva, he studied the brainwaves and how we can retain information, collect information, as well as do like remote viewing like the CIA uses. And that is through the alpha brainwave, which is like an awakened meditation, so to speak, where your brainwaves are at a calm level where you retain as much information as possible. But that's where most manifestation happens. So when you say calm, you are spot on, mate. So the example that I gave with my partner with the skipping, when
Yes.
she was frustrated, that's tension, that's resistance in the brain waves. So you can't flow. When she's excited and happy, what's that? Resistance, tension. It doesn't matter what emotion is associated to the tension, it's the same wave.
Yeah.
So once you calm that wave, everything happens differently.
Yeah.
So for me, I do that. Meditation is a big, big part of my day. And I will do that continuously throughout the day. I do usually one every night and one in the morning. But sometimes if I'm running even 5 minutes in the car before I go into work and just calming the brain, detaching from your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, and just being present in yourself,
Yeah.
it actually allows, and then that centers your energy, clarity sets in, and that's when manifestation happens easiest. That's when
Yeah.
answers happen.
Yeah. Mate, we're living in a busy world and, everyone's always busy and got things to do and can't wait and rushing to get on with the next thing. But this has really, had a big impact on my life, being having more clarity, taking a moment before, even in a conversation, before answering a question, just taking a moment to relax and think about my response.
Yep.
And, I think a lot of people get a hell of a lot out of this, but they don't have the mindset that it's it's a way forward. I mean, for example, I've come away, I mean, you're probably the same in bodybuilding. I've been around rugby league a lot. So this sort of thing to a lot of rugby people and probably bodybuilding people is it's all woo-woo. It's like yoga, it's like hairy-fairy
Mm,
stuff,
yeah.
but it can be so powerful.
Mate, 100%, and it's funny that the people that often think it's like kind of fluffy stuff,
Yeah,
new age, they're the ones who get the most benefit from it,
yeah,
ironically, because they've never experienced it. When they do, it's a completely profound thing.
yeah,
We do it at a subconscious level without even knowing. I had a friend of mine, I hadn't even told him about the mind control stuff. And he shared a story that his dad, who's overseas, needed money from him, needed $2,000 from him to help pay some builders for his property overseas that was urgent. And he was saying, man, I was so stressed. I said to my dad, yes, but he hadn't been working during COVID. He says, I was struggling to feed the family. So I had no idea where I was going to get this money from. But my dad has never, ever, ever asked me for money. And he says, and I just felt like he's always supported, he's always done. So I just felt like I couldn't say no. And I
yeah,
was freaking out. So I went home, sat down, had a shisha, and I was thinking calmly, just trying to think about how am I going to solve this? And I thought about 2 friends that I could ask. And then I started to think about, I might ask this guy because, yeah, I'll ask him. And he goes, mate, no word of a lie. Within 5 minutes, he gets a text message from this mate saying, bro, I need you to come past the shop. I need you to sign some paperwork for me. And he goes, yeah, too easy. I'll come. I'll see you soon. I need to ask you a question as well. He shows up to his mate's shop and his mate gives him a paperwork to sign. It was for a license plate number that he had been trying to sell that he had just sold for $4,000. And he goes, I managed to sell your number plate. Yeah, you go, sign the paperwork. There's your $4,000. So he goes, mate, I had 2K to give to my dad and 2K for the family, and I didn't do anything. But can you see how he actually did a lot? He calmed his energy. He allowed the universe to find a solution, and he was
Yeah.
open to the solution. And I think that's what we don't realize as rugby players. Or I was watching John Cena on TV on Netflix, and I'm so amazed with his energy backstage because everyone says to him, "Good luck, it'll be a great show," and he turns around and goes, "Well, if it's not, there's always Monday night. You know, if it's not a good show, there's always Monday night." And he
Yeah.
goes, "Well, the point is to have fun." Like his mentality is so relaxed and so flowing, and he's open to it. Whether it's a good show or a bad show, he's calm.
Yeah.
He knows that he'll get through it, which is what's made him one of the best performers in that arena, right? So, and he's an
Absolutely.
athlete. And I think if most rugby players in that had to take that, think how much energy is wasted when you lose a match just from the emotions because you
Mm.
haven't self-regulated.
Yeah.
You
100%.
ask tennis players about this type of mentality, they're the ones that are most up to speed, I think.
Yeah.
Move on to the next point. Forget the last point. Win or lose,
That's it.
next point, focus, next point, next point. Stay
Yeah.
calm, stay open.
Next
And the
job.
winners are the ones that can do that for the long haul.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Pedro, with everything that you've been through, if you were to sort of look back and review everything that life's taught you, what's the biggest thing that life's taught you?
Good question. The biggest lesson that life's taught me, you're not who you think you are. And whatever you think you are, you weigh more than what you think.
Nice. Yeah.
Like, honestly, I'm 49 and I'm still learning more about myself.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know,
finding the same.
it's one of those things is when you realize, like, man, our parents did the best they could, but they didn't really cultivate who I am.
Yeah.
And then you realize I perpetuated that. I continued to cultivate the idea of me rather than exploring who I really am. And we often hear people say, I'm going to make a comeback, as opposed to, you've always been there. You're just uncovering more of yourself.
Yeah.
You know, it's completely different. You know, you've always been there. And that's the biggest lesson. And this is what I hope my kids learn, is that they will continuously be growing, to surround them with people that help them grow. And it's
Yeah.
that they are accountable also to help others grow. You know,
Yeah.
it's nowadays we fear correction,
Yeah.
but
100%.
you know, and how is there growth in that?
Yeah. It's holding a lot of people back.
You know, yeah, and relationships. You know, we often butt heads, and it's normal nowadays. But in my mind, even my son with his girlfriend, he said, "Look, I'm gonna call you out on stuff that I think needs to change, and that has nothing to do with how I love you. And I insist and I ask that you do the same for me, because how am I to see my mistakes if I'm unconscious and unaware, and other people are too scared to make me aware?"
Yeah.
You know? And he really does. And you have to have that response when someone makes you aware of something that you don't like,
Yeah.
corrects you. Remind yourself that's coming from a place of love,
Yeah.
you know? And I always say any negative emotion comes from love.
Yeah.
You know, you're mad at somebody, it's because you care enough to be mad.
Yeah.
So when you correct them from that energy, not the mad energy. You know,
100%.
I'm upset with that because I'm missing you. And now I
Mm.
feel let down that you've canceled on me.
Yeah.
And then the other person has the opportunity, well, no, I was too busy doing this, I was too busy doing that. You're not going to learn.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that's how I made you feel. I have missed you. There's ways of communicating when you take that accountability.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest lesson I've learned. You're not who you think you are, and you're way more than that, than what you
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. That's awesome. For someone listening that's going through the middle of their own diagnosis, setback, or collapse in life, what advice would you give them?
First piece of advice is not even my own. It's from Steve Covey. He wrote the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And I put my
Hmm.
little spin on it. And the way I say it is, no situation will ever be as bad as your negative response to it.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I tell people. It's not something you might want to hear when you're feeling your worst, but it's the one thing that will actually snap out of the amount that you can make it worse than what it already is.
Yeah.
Any negative reaction to a negative situation will make it way worse than it needs to be. And then straight away, you choose, how are you going to respond?
Respond. Yeah. Excellent. Pedro, your story is a powerful example of being stronger than the setback, showing what's possible when you've got the right mindset and deciding to build forward around a completely new reality. For people that feel pulled into your world or might want to work with you, where can they get hold of you or find you?
Oh, mate, the easiest way, honestly, is just Instagram. I've still had the same tag, Wolf Pepe. It's Wolf PEPE, and or they can look up at the I Alpha Project on Instagram, on YouTube, and Spotify. But they can just email me through there. Easy find.
That's great.
I don't really do Facebook much.
You don't do Facebook?
Nah, not too much.
I've been a bit quiet there too. Mate, thank you for being here today
Mate,
and
I've loved it.
being honest and so open and sharing your story with us. And thank you for living how you lead everybody and live the life that you do every single day. It's a big inspiration, not just to me, but for everybody that knows you and everybody that sees you. So
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
thank you for being such a good inspiration.
No, mate, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, mate. I love being on here. It's good to share the story. The more people talk, the more we learn.
Absolutely. And that's what it's all about.
You know, and we're all in it together, whether we like it or not.
Absolutely. And for every guest here as well, it's a reminder that we only get one life and it's far too precious to stay broken.
Yeah, mate.
You know, we owe it to ourselves to move on, move forward and build the life that we want.
Mate, you know, and I always say, like, my family deserves the best of me.
Yeah.
And I deserve the best of them. So it comes with this freedom where self-exploration, ownership, and accountability is an expression of love.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think reminding us that it will keep us on the track, knowing that the best form of love that I can ever show you is by showing up as authentic as possible with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And you do that really well, mate.
Mate, you too, brother. You too, my man.
Yeah. Okay. If you want to keep hearing stories like this, follow the show, share it with someone who's rebuilding as well. And you can come and find us at strongerthanthesetback.com.au. If you're going through some tough times at the moment, just remember, tough times don't last, but tough people do. Take care.
Awesome, and thank you. Much love, bro.
Mate, much love.